welcome back to another EDH deck tech. Very excited for this one today. I've been working on this one for maybe like a month or two, just tweaking it a lot. So I guess, as you can see, so this is my Kess Dissident Mage deck. I originally had a Nicol Bolas the Ravager Super Friends deck, and I was getting a bit bored of it over time. It had some weaknesses that I couldn't really figure out how to get around. And Kess Dissident Mage was always one of my favorite Grixis commanders. I used to play Grixis Control in Modern. I used to be one of my pet decks. I used to love playing it. And I always just tried to fit in one of Kess Dissident Mage. So I always wanted this deck. The problem is every time I brewed around it, it ended up just being another Spellslinger deck. I have a Niv Mizzet deck, Niv Mizzet Perun, that I really enjoy. So I didn't want just another Spellslinger deck, so I was really trying to find a Grixis commander that wasn't Spellslinger, but I really liked Kess, so I wanted to play with Kess, but then I didn't want Spellslinger, so I wanted to try and find some way to have I guess a Kess deck, and then I came across some people had the idea of creating a Kess Reanimator deck, and I was like, that's really interesting, because I really liked my Chainer Reanimator deck, but it was getting a bit too combo-y. I was kind of just going for the same lines all the time, so I really enjoyed the Reanimator style, but yeah, with Chainer it was just quite easy just to kind of Grey Merchant of Asphodel every time. So when I was like, okay, well, a Kess Reanimator kind of makes sense. There's a lot of reanimation instants and sorceries that I can bring back. A lot of those looting effects that Chainer doesn't really have. It kind of relies on those Entomb kind of cards. So I was like, okay, this will be kind of an interesting style. So this is my Kess Dissident Mage Reanimator deck. Now, there are some, I guess, placed on restrictions for this deck. I guess as I go through the deck, probably one of the glaring omissions is Entomb and Buried Alive. Ultimately, I found that they were more powerful than I wanted. I have a lot of big fatties I guess in this deck, and turn one Entomb into a Reanimate next turn was getting a bit a bit too much, I think. So I have those as glaring omissions. So the Entomb style effects, where I'm starting to search for the library, really start at 4. I found that 4 people have set up something on the board. They have some interaction ready to go. So 4 I felt was a fine enough number to kind of get those Entomb effects. Other than that, it's a lot of looting. So if I draw it and I reanimate it, well, that's all fair game. Okay, so we'll go through the deck. So Kess, great. So it will let us rebuy those instant sorceries. So a lot of the looting effects, as well as some of the reanimation spells. So it's quite nice. It's not too important for the deck, but it adds that redundancy, which is really nice. Okay, so we'll go through what we're reanimating. So Burning Rune Demon, first up. This one, not necessarily a reanimation target, but it is that nice to have where it can come in and you're essentially going to put one in your graveyard and one to your hand, and ultimately that's where we want. So an opponent will choose. You can just put 2 fatties, you'll get one, and then you'll reanimate the other. Normally try to pick ones that are of I guess equal kind of power level. There are some in here that are more powerful than others, so you probably want to have something more even, so that it doesn't really matter what they pick. And then Lord of the Forsaken. This one's another one, a nice one that's we're not really going to reanimate per se, but it does have that pay 1 life to allow us to pay the colors of those spells that we're getting with Kess's ability. So quite nice. All right. Arvanox the Mind Flail. So this is the secret lair what is it, universe within alternative to the Mind Flayer. I can't remember what it's called, but this one probably the I guess the weakest, but I want to play with this. This one's the only one that I haven't tested, but I want to put it in the deck. Just because I think it's a fun card, and 7 mana is a lot, so you know we can reanimate this early and just get that card value, because it's the end of each end step. We're going to exile all those cards and we can play them, and then it can become a creature hopefully. So it's going to give us some additional cards that you know we don't really have access to. So I think it's a fun card. This one is the one that I'm testing. If you have a preferred fatty in here, definitely put that one in. Okay, Diluvian Primordial. So out of the Primordial sets, this one's a really nice one. Now, this one is not one that you reanimate early, because people don't have instants and sorceries in their graveyard yet, or any that you really want. But sometimes, you know, you get those cultivates and things, which is, you know, decent enough. But as the game goes later and people have played their big spells, you've got that opportunity. So this one I don't go for early. Later in the game I'll try to reanimate this one. Hullbreaker Horror. So this one's a nice little control piece. It has flash, so sometimes I do like to keep this just to play it when it gets later in the game. But it's going to help us control. Now, we don't have a lot of instants and sorceries necessarily to play with spells on the stack, but returning non-land permanents will have plenty, because we have a lot of cheap looting effects. So this one's quite nice, just help control the board. Okay, Jin-Gitaxias Progress Tyrant. So this is one of those go-to ones that you will want to kind of animate, get out early. So we have lots of instant sorceries, so it's great that we will be able to copy them. Artifacts, not so much. We really just have artifact ramp, but it also helps control the board, so that we can you know, keep our opponents in check as we're countering their spells. So it's quite nice. This one's good to get out early. Lord Xander. So this one I also haven't tested with, obviously because it just came out, but I did want to put this one in the deck. This one is also one that you want to kind of get out early. It's going to come in, it's going to get a few cards from one opponent. So this is always going to attack target one opponent, so you know, it kind of keeps that balance in check. But you're going to get a few cards, which is nice, you know, for your primordial, Diluvian Primordials and stuff like that, which is quite nice, as well as the milling effect. But you know, and then they get to sacrifice their permanents when they do want to get rid of it. So unless they're exiling it, you know, the most you're going to get is a few cards, and you might get some permanent sacrifice, non-land permanent sacrifice. So ultimately, it's not as powerful as I think people are losing their minds over, but it's still a nice 6/6 that you're going to be swinging in. If you get it down early, it's going to be great. There's a whole Primal Tide, just a nice cheap budget reanimation target. It's great because it helps fill our hands as people, especially if you get it down early and people are still casting their mana rocks and their cultivates and things like that, and it can protect itself. So this is great. You know, we're discarding those cards, so we want those discard outlets. So if we want to protect this, we can discard some fatties that are sitting in our hands. So this is quite nice. This one I like to get down early as well. Although the 7/7 is not really going to do much. Sheoldred Whispering one, just a great one to start managing the board. It's also going to reanimate our effects, so sometimes you might want to put the trigger on the stack and then discard something into the graveyard to then reanimate it, which is quite nice. But it's just to help control the board. So another one that's nice to get down early. Toxrill, the corrosive. This one's really good. So, and also another one that gets down really early. Games tend to end very quickly. So at the end step, you're going to put slime counters, and then they're all going to get -1 for each slime. And then you're also going to get slugs that are going to help you draw. So that's really, really nice. But ultimately, another one that's great to get down early to control the board. Archon of Cruelty. This one was one that when it was kind of first came out, I was like, okay, this is okay for Commander, whatever. This is more of a modern card. But the more I play with it, the more I just like, it's okay that it just targets one person. It comes in, you get the draw effect and the sack effect, and then every time it attacks. So if it comes down really early, they don't have too much opportunity to deal with it and progress their boards. So really, you're just sitting there just drawing cards and sacking people's worst creatures. So I found this one really, really nice. And it's also great that it's non-legendary for reasons that I'll explain later. We do want some non-legendary targets, so good. Storm-Tide Leviathan, nice one just to help protect ourselves. So, you know, creatures without flying or island walk can't attack. So just because you will become enemy number one when you are playing this type of deck. People do not like to have Jin-Gitaxias on the board. So it's nice just to have a bit of protection in the form of a big creature that we can reanimate. So it's nice. Tidespout Tyrant, same with Hullbreak Horror, but this one can return lands. Not that I usually, I never really, unless it's, I think I did like a Cabal Office once, but it's, you know, I'm not really targeting people's lands, but it can target people's lands, but essentially it's there to start controlling the board as people play their stuff. Void Winnower. Another one where it's just to help control, because we are just playing big creatures. That is our strategy. So we want to minimize people's impact as much as possible. So Void Winnower, you know, you can't even, as the joke is. You know, they can't play spells and of even cost, and they can't block with creatures of even cost. So, you know, with our board control and then our hand control, it's really going to help. So this one's a nice one, also non-legendary. And then Jin-Gitaxias Core Augur, I think is the name. I got the Phyrexian Secret Lair one, which is quite nice. This one just fills your hand. It gets rid of your opponent's hand. This is by far the most powerful thing in the deck. This is what you would want to reanimate if you had Entomb, right? If I had Entomb, I'd just go for this every time. So this is the biggest thing. This will definitely win you games if it comes down early. It's going to fill up your hand, which is perfect, you know, and then you can just dump more cards into the graveyard. So definitely great. So that's our creatures. So, you know, there's like 12 or so plus there, enough to have at least some in our hand. So when we do get them to the graveyard, we will want our reanimation effects. So reanimate, great, core reanimation spell. These are much more valuable, I guess, than the Entomb effects. So we want as many of these reanimation ones as we can. So reanimate, just super cheap. Animate dead, great. Now these are not spells, but they're just so important that we will take the enchantment ones. So we have animate dead, we have Dance of the Dead, very similar except it comes in tapped. And then we have Exhume. So each player puts a creature card. Now, usually your creatures are going to be just much bigger than their creatures. So, and especially if it comes down early, right? So if you pitch something to the graveyard, then Exhume within the first, 4 turns, they don't really have creatures in their graveyard. So you might be the only one putting a creature on. So I found this one really great. Later in the game, it becomes worse because, you've gotten rid of some people's big creatures. But the idea is that your creatures should be bigger than this. Okay, Persist, great. It gets -1, -1, but our things are so big, who cares? But this one is non-legendary, so there is a sprinkle of non-legendary in there. But there have been some occasions where I only have legendary and I have this, and it can be a bit of a pain. But it's just still valuable enough that you'll want this. Stitch Together. So Threshold. It will essentially reanimate for black, or it will put in your hand. Usually I'll just continue to wait until I have Threshold. Threshold, easy enough for this deck, but not straight out like it's not a dredge deck or anything like that. So you still will need to put in effort to get Threshold. So it's not the quickest. This is more like a mid-game reanimate, but it's relatively cheap. Doom Necromancer. This is probably the worst reanimate that we got, on a creature. But if we need to bring back a creature, this can be one of them in order to bring back something else later. I've found that if I put this down early without anything in the bin, people like really threatened, but not threatened enough to actually deal with it. So it kind of just sits there waiting until I'm ready. So that's nice. But normally I will put this out, if possible, put this out, and then hopefully, as it comes around next turn, have something ready to go. So like I like to play this, then on my next turn, play something to put something in the bin, then reanimate it with this, right? Don't have something in the bin and everyone's like, oh, next turn they're going to have Jin-Gitaxias, let's get rid of this, or get rid of their graveyard. More it's like, I don't have anything in my graveyard, but I have a Doom Necromancer. What's the deal with that? And then people are like, oh, well, I know it's a problem, but I'll deal with it later. Necromancy, just great. It has flash, but then you would have to sacrifice it, so not particular, but 3 mana will still pay for it. Ghoul's Night Out has been an interesting one. So you do get one for each player, so that includes yourself. So you'll get your biggie plus others from other players. But they have Decayed. I'm not really attacking with some of them. I do want to attack with, obviously, like Archon Cruelty and things like that. But with Decayed, I found that it doesn't really matter. This incantation technique, by far the best reanimation spell that we have in here. I guess, maybe outside Reanimate and Animate Dead and stuff, they're classics, but absolutely bombshell. First it mills, so demonstrate. I always demonstrate. You pick the person that's not really playing with their graveyard, is an elves player with some crappy elves, whatever. And then, so you mill 5 cards, then you return any creature from the graveyard to the battlefield. It doesn't have to be out of those 5 that you milled. So normally what I do is I'll set up to have at least 1 in my graveyard. Then when the copy also triggers, on average, I get at least 1 of my big fatties. So I set up 1 in the graveyard, then get 1 from the mills, so then I have 2. I found that if I just cast this without anything prepped, I might hit my 1, I might not hit my 1. So have something prepped, and then you'll have a good chance of getting both. But you don't have enough to get, unless you're lucky, get 2 big guys. But really love this. Plus there's a sorcery, so then you just cast it again. Great, fills up the graveyard for that threshold as well. Okay, so now some Entomb effects. I thought I started at 4, but I do have Unmarked Grave. This one's, non-legendary, so it's not that bad. It's going to get, mainly it gets like Archon of Cruelty or Tidespout Tyrant and things like that. So this one's quite nice, but you're never going to get Jin-Gitaxias, which I guess is the big bad. Or a Glow Mage. So this one, search the library, it gets a counter resistance sorcery. That can happen. I've never had to get an instant sorcery with it, but you may, I may not. You may want to put the incantation technique in there so that you can do it with Kess, for instance. So you do have that path, although I've never really gone down it. I'd rather just get a creature and then try to get hit a reanimation spell another way. But it's nice. You do have to wait a turn, obviously, for it to tap. Violent Tumor had Death Touch, so it serves a bit of protection, but puts something straight in the graveyard. Corpse Connoisseur, same thing, has Unearth, so you can do it twice. Grave Breaker Lamia. Spells you cast from the graveyard cost 1 less, so that does apply to Kess, which is nice, which is a nice little thing. It has lifelink, but essentially it's there for the Entomb effect. And then Final Parting. Final Parting is very interesting. So this is the only tutor effect. I think a 5 mana tutor is fine, but really you can go for. I've held this on for turn 6, played this, got Reanimate and Jin-Gitaxias, put Jin-Gitaxias in the graveyard and have Reanimate in my hand. Right? So 6 mana, you win the game. Pretty much. Or you could try to go for a different one. But that's probably the most powerful there. Now the looting effects. So the one thing that I had with the problem I had with Chainer is that when it kind of held in my hand, I had some discard effects, but not a lot. But in Kess, you can have heaps of looting effects. So those draw cards and then discard cards, or discard draw cards, whatever. Those kind of effects you can have plentiful, and you can just draw through your deck really, really easily. So, and you get to do it twice, which is great. So Careful Study, nice and cheap. Draw 2, discard 2. We generally want the draw first and then discard, so we can see what we have and then discard. But it's nice just because it's so cheap. Faithless Looting, same thing, but this one has flashback. Cathartic Reunion, you get to discard 2, but you draw 3. So you're really getting through your deck. Charter Course, draw 2, discard 1. Tainted Indulgence, so this one I haven't tested, but essentially it is like Chart of Course. So you draw 2, then discard a card unless you have 5 or more mana values among cards in your graveyard. When I was kind of play testing, like goldfishing this, it was usually, I'm usually discarding a card anyway. So it's pretty much an instant speed Chart of Course, or just 2 mana draw 2, which is still nice. Full of possibilities. So this one you have to discard as an additional cost. So you have to have the creature in your hand, but draw 2. Tormenting Voice, this is sorcery speed, same thing. Frantic Search, by far, probably the best one. Draw 2, discard 2, and then you untap. So sometimes, like in one game I had this, I played it, I got, I had a fatty in my hand, but I got Necromancy. So this untapped my lands. I made sure to discard the big fatty, and then I just played Necromancy, right? Because my land's untapped, so then I played Necromancy. So it was quite nice, that one. Prismari Command, another one. So this is usually the draw 2 and discard 2, and I'll either do the treasure or the destroy target artifact just as an additional kind of value. And then Big Score, so another one I'm testing, but I did have Unexpected Windfall in this place, which was really nice, just that it gives 2 treasures, so it helps ramp because our big fatties are 7-8 mana, so sometimes you just have to cast them. So getting those treasures is nice. So that's the looting effect. So with Kess, we can just keep getting them back, which is great. All right, so removal. So some cheap removal, Rapid Hybridizations, great. Pongify, very similar. Vandal Blast, so we're Grixis, so we can play lots of the core ones. Vandal Blast, great for artifacts. Feed the Swarm, great for enchantments. Chaos Warp kind of helps get rid of anything that we can't handle. We also have some counters, so I don't have the free counters in here. Did want to kind of keep it as I am playing with all my mana exposed, so what I have is so everyone can see. I don't want to play Jin-Gitaxias and then have free counter spells to back it up. If my opponents want to try to get rid of it, they can definitely do so. So Swan Song, nice cheap. Arcane Denial, great, replaces itself, so that's great. Counterspell, simple. Delay, also very simple. And then Drown Lock. Drown Lock I really love, just because it's really versatile. And then board wipes, so Cyclonic Rift. Still, this one's powerful, but I think it's okay for this deck, where we've got our big fatties, late game and all. So Cyclonic Rift, super powerful. Toxic Deluge, great. We can pay life, and Blasphemous Axe. So we're in Grixis, we can play all the best ones. And then our ramp. So we have Dark Ritual, just really easy. First mana we can get 1 mana we can just get our rocks and reanimations and all that ready to go. That's great. It is mainly black, so that's good. Arcane Signet, taps for any mana. Then we have Demir Signet, Izzet Signet, and Rakdos Signet. We're in Grixis, so we play all the signets. Talisman of Creativity, Talisman of Dominance, and Talisman of Indulgence. So again, in Grixis, so play all of them. Fellwar Stone. We're in blue, black, red, very popular colors, so our opponents are going to do that. And then Nightshade Familiar also reduces a lot of our blue and red spells. We're mainly black-blue, so this is still quite nice. And then our lands, so we are again in Grixis, so we kind of try to play and with enough colors. But Duke of Bog's just great, has that utility for exile, which is important. Now, with 3 color, Field of Dead, very viable. Lots of lands of different names. So you know, we're not a lands deck, but just in the late game for some protection, it's quite nice. Port of Carfell. So one of the few tap lands in here, you know, Field of the Dead and Bajuka Box, so they're all tap lands. But just nice is just in our land spot, we have another reanimation spell, but it's pretty expensive. So, you know, it's more for late game if we really need. Takanuma, Abandoned Mire. So this one does mill, which is nice. Now it returns it to our hand, so you know, keep that in mind. If you don't have, you only get one creature, then that has to come to your hand. But having the mill's just there, just to help, and maybe return one of those creatures, because we don't have a reanimation spell, but we have enough mana on our next turn to cast it, for instance. Maybe we just go for that. Wasteland. Always play a land destruction land in your deck, at least one. In Grixis, I don't have too much room to afford more than one, but it's nice. Someone's going to have a Cabal cover, someone's going to have a Field of the Dead, so good to get rid of it. You know, you could do Ghost Quarter or Strip Mine here. Then we play we play 4 fetches. So Bloodstained Mire, Polluted Delta, Prismatic Vista, and Scalding Tarn. So Prismatic Vista gets our basics. Then we play 3 shocks. So Blood Crypt, Steam Vents, and Watery Grave. So, you know, shocks obviously for fetching. Xander's Lounge. I mean, I haven't tested this one, but Tri-lands are great and they're fetchable. Really, really good. Then we play the Midnight Hunt ones, I guess that block where it's 3 lands or more, or 2 other lands. So you know, these usually just come in untapped, or you play them tapped turn 1 and then you play your rock on turn 2. So really great. Then we have our check lands, of course. Then I have the pathways. I mean, I just had these, so these are probably the worst ones in the deck, only because they really just tap for 1 color. But we're not too strong on red, so you know, most of the time it's just black and blue, and we don't have really strong color requirements. We have no like triple black spells, so you know, I found these to be just fine. I have Training Center. Now, when Commander Legends 2 comes out, the Baldur's Gate one, the other ones will be reprinted, so I'll put them in here, but I just have the one at the moment. The others are a bit too expensive. City of Brass. So these are your rainbow lands. You know, the 1 damage doesn't matter, but it gives us any color. Command Tower, also great. Exotic Orchard. You know, our opponents are generally playing our colors, so it's fine. Mana Confluence, another one where you just pay life. And then I have islands, and then snow-covered islands, and then mountain, snow-covered mountain, and then swamp and snow-covered swamp. So I'll get rid of the snow-covered swamp and the snow-covered mountain, the additional one for when the those Battle Bond lands come in for Commander Legends. But yeah, that's the deck. It's been a lot of fun. I like the looting aspect of this reanimated deck, and it was actually really surprising how much of the reanimation targets were actually blue, right? So a lot of the controlling reanimation targets are, you know, blue. You got Jin-Gitaxias, both Jin-Gitaxias, Tidespout, Storm, and there's a Hullbreaker Horror, Delirium Primordial. So they're all mainly blue, which I found to be very interesting, which you don't really have access to with Chainer. So yeah, that a lot of fun. The only red one is Lord Xander. Red just didn't really have. I had Atali in here. I was testing Atali, and you know, it had to attack, so it didn't really feel right. Like, it just didn't work. Like, someone just remove it, so I had to kind of wait for it to attack. And then I didn't want to kind of put Swiftfoot Boots and Lightning Greaves just in this deck just for that. So, you know, it didn't really work out, but I found the black and blue ones to be really, really nice. Now, of course, you can put in more Eldrazi. Eldrazi are very good. They're also very expensive, so I don't have any Eldrazi, so which is why I've gone blue. So things like Arvinox can be probably changed over. If you're not really into Storm Tide Leviathan, that one's another one that you can change up. And there's a whole I really liked Diluvian Primordial, again, because it's a kind of late game one, you might not want that. Burning Root Demon I've also kind of liked as well. So yeah, that's the deck. It has been a lot of fun to play. You will be enemy number one, so keep that in mind when you have, you know, a Lord Xander out. People might not like it, but I like to play that style, so I really enjoyed the deck, and I hope you do too. Thanks, see ya.